Hey everyone, welcome back to another installment of my podcast. I am exercise physiologist Joe Cannon, back for another week where we talk about basically all things under the sun related to exercise, health, wellness, nutrition. Basically, I try to bring clarity to these topics without the hype, no spin, no testimonials, just the facts, hopefully in plain English. Basically, I try to go to the research and make sense of it for everybody to help you avoid getting ripped off, saving money, and hopefully staying healthy along the way. This week, we're going to talk about, are there any supplements out there that can restore your hair color? In other words, anti-gray hair supplements. So I was on social media, I think it was Instagram, a couple weeks ago, and I saw somebody say, during the pandemic, we're all probably about 2 or 3 weeks away from seeing what everyone's real hair color really is. And I got a kick out of that because it was really true, because at least where I am, the barbershops and salons have been closed for some time. And I had even heard that stores are now running out of hair dye as people try to adapt to what is sometimes being called the new normal. Regardless, hopefully we get back to the old normal before too long. But regardless of when that happens, hopefully soon. But I can tell you that there are dietary supplements out there that are being touted as a natural way to restore hair color from the inside. And that's the main thing I want to bring to your attention today. So before we get into any of that, hopefully you've been keeping busy during the quarantine and the pandemic. I certainly have been. I recently posted a review on my Supplement Clarity website about whether or not hibiscus tea, which I like to put in my smoothies, whether hibiscus tea can actually help women going through menopause. That's actually something that women have been asking me about, and I looked at the research to try to figure out if there was anything to that. So if you've heard of hibiscus tea helping menopause symptoms, go to supplementclarity.com, and it should be sitting right there. If you're listening to me in the near future, if you're listening to me in the distant future, just use the search box, search for either menopause or hibiscus tea, and you will find that review. Now, before I talk about gray hair supplements, I do like to talk about the myth of the week. And this myth is one I think is quite popular in the gym. Basically, it is stretching. Is stretching bad for your muscles? In other words, will stretching make you weak? Will it make you weaker? So while on the surface, this might seem like a pretty easy myth to debunk, and I would imagine most people probably would think it was a myth, turns out that when it comes to weightlifters, there's a lot of them out there that do think that stretching will make them weaker. And the reason for that is that there are several studies out there, I think 6, 7 or so, that do appear to show that if someone stretches for 20, 30, 40 minutes, or if they do lots and lots of long stretching where they hold the stretch for more than a minute or so, that actually appears to reduce muscle power. In other words, the total amount of force that your muscles can exert. And it's because of those studies that I think a lot of weightlifters believe that stretching is bad for them. And before we go any further, why are there so many studies out there like this? Well, I got to think that a lot of these clinical studies are done by graduate students who are picking a topic for their dissertation to get out of college. And they probably became aware of one study that showed that a lot of stretching reduced power, and they said, let's do another study to see if we can find the same thing. And so with like lemmings, they all tended to basically follow each other to try to replicate the findings, the result of which is we have several studies that do appear to show a reduction in power following lots and lots and lots of stretching. But here's the thing that I think people tend to forget about. Essentially, in these investigations, people were either holding the stretch for more than a minute and doing several sets of that, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 sets of hamstring stretches, for instance, or those individuals were performing 20 to maybe 40 minutes of stretching before they went into the gym and started lifting weight. So who the heck does that? I mean, really, think about that. Is that even realistic? Who does that? Who stretches like that? It would be like somebody, for instance, taking a yoga class right before they went into the gym and started like lifting really heavy weight. It's just not realistic. It really isn't. I don't know anybody who does anything like that. Do you? So I would argue that most people do not stretch the way that is done in some of these investigations. Also, stretching the upper body would likely have no impact, or even a very little impact, but I think none at all, on the strength and power output of, say, the leg. So for instance, if you were stretching the upper body muscles, your chest, your back, your arms, etc., that would probably have very little impact on your ability to, say, squat really heavy or deadlift really heavy or something like that. So while there are studies out there that do appear to show that stretching impairs weightlifting performance, in the lower body at least, those studies, again, they're not realistic. And I have yet to see any study showing that, say, 5 minutes of stretching impairs exercise performance. If anything, you can find research showing that stretching reduces injury and may even help muscles grow bigger and stronger. But that is a story for another conversation. So I'm going to call this one a myth. I do not see any good evidence that realistically stretching will reduce muscle power output, because I don't think anybody stretches in the real world like in these clinical studies. So take that for what it is. I'm going to call it a myth. Now, let's jump into the main topic this week, is the gray hair supplements. Are there any dietary supplements that you can go to the store and get that will reverse your gray hair, your white hair, if you will, even that, and restore it to its natural color from the inside? Well, if you look at some of the advertisements for these things on the internet or even in stores, you'll find that that's exactly what they are claiming to do. And I get why this is actually, an idea that people would gravitate towards, because, one of the first signs of maybe getting older is perhaps maybe our hair is starting to turn gray or white. So do these supplements actually work? Well, right off the bat, I'm going to let you in on what I think is the key ingredient in pretty much many of these supplements. And the key ingredient is called catalase. Catalase. So what is catalase? Well, it's an enzyme. Catalase is an enzyme, and we make it. And one of the things it does is it breaks down hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide is a very potent generator of free radicals. And I'm sure that free radicals are often seen as the bad guys in science. Free radicals, they damage cells, so cells don't work so well, they break down DNA, and free radicals, too many free radicals being produced, are implicated in a wide array of diseases, everything from cancer to maybe even the aging process itself, which is probably another reason why catalase is in a lot of these dietary supplements. There is actually the free radical theory of aging. So anything you can do to maybe knock down your production of free radicals might actually perhaps slow down the aging process, and maybe, for instance, in this conversation, even help hair retain its more natural color. So what about catalase? So as I said, it's an enzyme. It breaks down hydrogen peroxide, and it turns out that this catalase enzyme is involved in hair turning gray and turning white. And it turns out as we get older, we make less catalase. So as we make less of this catalase enzyme, well, it turns out there's a buildup of hydrogen peroxide in our hair follicles. Remember, hydrogen peroxide, as I'm sure many women know, that you can use to actually turn your hair blonde, and it is a potent producer of free radicals. So as we make less of this catalase enzyme, there's a concomitant increase in hydrogen peroxide and free radicals, which in turn reduces the pigment melanin. Melanin is the pigment in our skin and in our hair that gives the hair and skin its color. So as we make less catalase, we build up hydrogen peroxide. This creates free radicals and in turn reduces our production to make melanin, the result of which is gray and white hair. So if we could replace the catalase, say through maybe taking a dietary supplement, would that in turn lower our production of hydrogen peroxide, thus allowing melanin to start back up again, and this in turn might restore hair color? Could that actually work? Well, as you may be thinking right now, this is a very fascinating question, and I agree, it is. So could taking catalase enzyme supplements actually either prevent gray hair or restore hair to its natural color again? So is there any proof of this? So I was curious enough to take a look at the clinical studies on this, and while I can tell you I did see a few studies that seem to show that catalase, the enzyme catalase, and hydrogen peroxide are involved in the graying of hair, unfortunately, I didn't find any clinical studies where researchers took people into the lab, gave them catalase supplements to see if their hair returned to its natural color again. And I gotta ask myself, what the heck's up with that? Why hasn't anybody ever tried to do that kind of a study? Why hasn't anybody ever, again, taken people into the lab, giving them catalase supplements? Let's, see if their hair changes back to its normal color. You'd think, given the popularity of this, and it is very popular, you'd think someone would have tested it by now. So I'm actually truly shocked that no one in the scientific community has ever tried to test this. Because these catalase dietary supplements are out there. I have seen them in stores, and I'm amazed that no one really tried to test it. It would be very easy to test. So I'm going to call it an epic fail on the part of the scientific community that no one's ever tried to test this. But beyond that, maybe there's a reason why. Maybe there's a reason why nobody's tried to test this. Because remember, catalase is an enzyme, okay? And enzymes tend to be made of protein. Enzymes are essentially protein-based machines. And the way an enzyme works is it helps a chemical reaction occur quicker than it normally would be left to its own devices. So enzymes just help chemical reactions occur quicker. Well, enzymes, again, are made of protein. So let's take a step back. What happens when you eat protein? Say a whey protein shake, you're taking a collagen supplement, you're eating a big juicy steak, a nice piece of fish. What happens when you eat protein? Well, the proteins are broken down in the stomach into their individual amino acids, and because amino acids make up proteins, and then we in turn absorb the amino acids, and then our bodies will use those amino acids to do whatever it needs them to be done, whether it's help build muscle, make new red blood cells, immune system cells, who knows, repair skin cells, build skin back up. Your body will use those amino acids to rebuild other proteins. So since catalase is basically a protein enzyme, don't we digest catalase like we would any other protein? I honestly think that's what happens. I think maybe nobody has ever looked at catalase because maybe to the scientific community, they all kind of thought the way I did. Well, it's a protein, so wouldn't you just digest it when you ate it? Maybe that's why nobody's ever taken it to the lab and looked at it, because from a sciencey standpoint, it doesn't make any sense that it would work. Yet on the surface, again, catalase does appear to play a role in graying of hair. And so maybe that's why nobody's looked at it yet. Maybe it just doesn't make any sense from a scientific standpoint. So I know what you're thinking. There are sublingual dietary supplements out there. And what happens if you were to maybe take one of these catalase supplements, put it under your tongue, let it dissolve? Could that be a way for catalase to get into the body by bypassing the digestive system, by bypassing the stomach, and allow the catalase enzyme to get in the bloodstream, where it could then work its magic directly on the hair itself? Well, maybe, but again, where is the evidence? As before, I can't find any research on sublingual catalase supplements to see if taking something under the tongue would in turn raise your level of catalase in the blood. And the same thing goes for maybe any kind of a patch where you put catalase on the skin to see if it can be absorbed by the skin. Again, no evidence for that. Doesn't mean it doesn't do this. It just means that no one's actually taken a look at it yet. And that's actually kind of unfortunate to be in my book. It's unfortunate. So if you were going to, say, try to naturally raise your catalase levels, and you didn't want to take, say, a catalase supplement, is there anything you could do that might raise your levels naturally? Well, maybe, yeah. So one thing I would say, again, it should come as no surprise that I'll say maybe give exercise a try. Again, I won't even talk about the wide variety of benefits you get from exercise, but there is some preliminary evidence, and I think it's kind of very preliminary at this standpoint, but there is some early evidence that maybe exercise might be able to raise catalase levels. I did uncover one mouse study, which did appear to show that exercise raised catalase levels by about 400%. That's impressive, but again, we're not lab mice, and so it's hard to say if the same thing would happen in us. Unfortunately, I should say, I did find a human study that did try to look at this. They actually recruited 18 soccer players, and ironically, they noted that exercise decreased catalase levels. That actually doesn't make a lot of sense when you think about it, because exercise generates free radicals. And to compensate for that, the body will start to ramp up its natural antioxidant defenses, of which catalase is one of those defenses. So why this particular study saw a decrease in catalase levels, I cannot fathom why that happened, except to say that, we'd have to see it duplicated. And I've never seen a duplication of that particular study. So I can't say for sure if exercise will improve catalase levels, in turn restoring hair to its natural color. I don't think so, though. And that's because I don't see people who exercise a lot and basically all having dark hair. I see people who work out a lot, and some have dark hair, and some actually have quite a few of gray hairs, and some of them have total white hair. So I'm personally not convinced that exercise will naturally augment catalase levels, but more than that, I'm not convinced that exercise restores hair to its natural color, whether or not it affects catalase levels or not. The other thing that I would throw out to you is perhaps another way to reduce catalase, or boost catalase levels, would be to lower your production of homocysteine. So homocysteine is a compound that we make in our body. It actually is not something that has a good reputation usually, because homocysteine makes your blood sticky, and you don't want to have a lot of sticky blood floating around your bloodstream, because that could cause maybe a heart attack. And homocysteine also can damage your blood vessels, which again is linked to heart attacks and stuff like that. It turns out that doctors will sometimes even measure homocysteine levels in their patients to see what their risk of maybe a heart attack might be. Now, the other reason I bring this up is that homocysteine also appears to increase hydrogen peroxide production. Remember, if we increase hydrogen peroxide, that might damage our hair follicles, contributing to gray hair. So the idea here might be lower homocysteine, you lower your hydrogen peroxide, and your hair goes back to its normal color. So does that work? Can't say either way. Goes back to what I said before. No one's ever tried to see if lowering homocysteine levels would restore hair color. So I can't say either way, but I'm skeptical of this. I have to be honest with you. I am skeptical of this. But if you do want to try lowering your homocysteine levels, and I do think having a healthy homocysteine level is a good idea because it is linked to heart disease. But if you want to lower your levels, pretty easy to do. You could exercise, that is going to help, but also take 3 vitamins. There's 3 B vitamins that are very well known to lower homocysteine level. And those 3 B vitamins are as follows: folate, folic acid, you know what is better as folic acid, vitamin B12, and vitamin B6. Folate, B6, and B12 are very effective at lowering homocysteine levels. And I know what you're thinking. Well, is it possible that taking folate, B6, and B12 restores hair color? I don't think so. But again, I have not seen any hair color restoration research on these 3 vitamins. So I can't comment either way, but I am skeptical of that. Other research has noted that maybe premature graying of hair might be tied to low levels of iron, calcium, vitamin D. And again, while those studies are out there, it's very difficult to prove if these nutrients or lack of these nutrients does contribute to gray hair. But again, if you're taking a multivitamin or you're eating well, you're eating, green leafy vegetables and stuff like that, you're most likely not going to be deficient in most of these vitamins. You can make an argument for maybe some older adults perhaps being deficient in B12. Sometimes as we get older, we don't absorb B12 that much. And that's why sometimes doctors will even give shots of B12 to people to raise their levels. And you can also make an argument that maybe people are deficient in vitamin D as well. Vitamin D appears to have a wide array of effects in the body. Skip back a few episodes, you'll see my review of vitamin D and what it appears to do. But in terms of graying of hair, I'm not totally convinced that these vitamins, or just taking these vitamins, is going to restore hair to its natural color. But you can't go wrong with eating the foods that contain them. Again, green leafy vegetables, healthy protein, fish, chicken, stuff like that. I don't see any problems with eating those foods at all. Any other supplements out there? Well, yeah, some of these gray hair supplements will contain other ingredients, and there's more coming out all the time. As sidebar, a lot of the research on these anti-gray hair supplements these days appears to be coming out of the European Union, France, and the UK and stuff like that. They seem to be pumping out various products that appear to, or at least they say, will restore hair color, but I don't see a lot of proof on these products as of yet. But other supplements that I have seen touted to restore hair color, they usually include things like quercetin, which is an antioxidant, and tyrosine. Tyrosine is an amino acid which helps us make melanin. So you see the idea here, if we can restore melanin production, then you can restore hair color. So that's why if you delve into this topic on your own, you're probably going to see a variety of antioxidants as well as tyrosine to help boost up melanin production, if you will. So what do we make of all this? Do these catalase supplements work? Honestly, I have my doubts. And it's ironic given the popularity. I'm just shocked, to be honest with you. I'm very shocked and surprised that no one has ever tested these things in a laboratory, because this would be simple to test. Think about this. Hair grows, after about 2 months or so, your hair has grown a certain amount. So this would be super duper easy to test. Basically take one of these supplements, whether it's a catalase supplement or any of these other hair color supplements, take them for like 4 to 8 weeks, 10 weeks, something like that. Take pictures of your hair before and after, and let's see if the hair color changed. This is simple to do. Any junior high school student could test this. I'm not making this up. Any junior high school student in a biology class could test these anti-gray supplements. Give somebody a supplement, at the recommended dosage for 4 to 8 weeks, 10 weeks, take before and after pictures. Let's see if it worked. How can nobody's ever done that study? It would be super easy to do. So, as you can tell, I'm skeptical of all these supplements. I don't doubt that one day there will be a cure for graying of hair. I do think that's going to happen. I think within our lifetime, we will see that drug or supplement come to fruition. It would be a gold mine. It would be the Viagra of cosmetics, if you will. I just know that's going to happen. And I know companies are pumping out lots and lots of money into research on this topic. I think the stuff coming out right now that I've been seeing, I have been unimpressed with, but I do think one day there will be something out there that will restore hair to its natural color. When that happens, I can't say, but I do think it will happen. Now, before that happens, before that day does arrive, I will point out to you that while we do tend to think of graying of hair as a sign of getting older, I would actually not say that's true. Different organ systems do age at different rates, and you really can't tell someone's biological age by the color of their hair. For instance, Rumor has it, as my grandmother told me, rumor has it that my grandfather actually turned gray and basically his hair eventually became white before the age of 20. No one's going to say a 20-year-old is old. So that's another reason why I don't think graying of hair and aging are completely linked to each other. But right or wrong, at least that gives me a little bit of solace when I look in the mirror because, I'm definitely going gray and going white myself. Thanks, Grandpop. But it is what it is, and so, there's not much we can do about it at this point. But there's a lot of technological breakthroughs I know are going to happen within our lifetimes. Definitely, I think within the next 10 or 15 years, I think there's going to be a revolution in the cosmetic world, just from the writing on the wall I've been seeing. So, I think we'll see it. But as of right now, I don't think what I see out there currently is going to give me much hope. So hopefully that saves you a little bit of time and money and effort if you're thinking about whether these supplements are right for you. As always, if you need to reach me, I'm pretty easy to find. I'm all over the internet. You can reach me directly either at any of my websites, joe-cannon.com or supplementclarity.com. At Supplement Clarity, by the way, you can actually find several reviews of hair color supplements. I have reviewed several of them. Some of them you may have heard of before, and some of them you may never have heard of before, but yet they are quite popular in some areas. So do check them out if you're curious about any of this stuff. Again, hopefully they'll save you some time and money as you're searching the mall for a supplement that might be right for you. Okay, so let's wrap up this week with the quote of the week, which comes to us from Robert Frost, who said something I think is pretty appropriate right now. And his quote goes like this: "I can sum up what I've learned about life in 3 words. It goes on." True, definitely true. Until next time, same bad channel. I'm Joe Cannon. Be safe, and where you can, try to make a difference.